Drive-thrus. Grab your food. Drive away. Simple, right? Well, not for these people. For some, drive-thrus are a stage for the weird, the absurd, and the totally unhinged. From monopoly money payments to passengers with hooves, fast food workers have seen it all. So buckle up, because we're diving into 101 of the strangest, funniest, and most unbelievable drive-thru moments. Let's floor it and roll into the madness. 1. A man in Florida once tried to pay for his meal with an alligator. He casually tossed the live reptile through the window at a Wendy's drive-thru, as if it were a perfectly normal transaction. The cashier, understandably terrified, called the police. The man was later arrested, and as it turns out, McDonald's may accept Apple Pay, but Wendy's does not accept alligators as legal tender. 2. A woman once pulled up to a Taco Bell drive-thru and ordered just a cup of ketchup, and then, without hesitation, she drank it like a smoothie right in front of the stunned cashier. She even gave it a little swirl like it was a fine wine. Either she lost a bet, or she seriously needs to rethink her beverage choices. 3. A guy once drove through a fast food drive-thru with a full-sized mannequin in the passenger seat, treating it like a real person. He even asked, "Do you want fries, honey?" and nodded as if it answered. The cashier just handed over 2 meals, probably hoping to avoid a horror movie situation. 4. Someone once pulled up to a drive-thru in a self-driving Tesla, except they were sitting in the back seat with a newspaper, acting like a chauffeur was driving. When the cashier hesitated, the guy peeked over the seat and said, "Oh, don't mind him, he's just shy." 5. One late-night customer rolled up to a fast food drive-thru and ordered 100 chicken nuggets, but demanded they be individually bagged. The employees, assuming he was joking, laughed. But when he insisted and refused to move forward, they called the manager. The request was denied, and the man threw a tantrum so bad that he blocked the drive-thru for over an hour. 6. A woman pulled up to a drive-thru in nothing but her birthday suit and acted like everything was totally normal. When questioned, she just shrugged and said she thought drive-thrus were clothing optional. The employees were too stunned to respond and just handed her the food, probably hoping she'd drive away before the health department got involved. 7. A man once drove up to a Wendy's, rolled down his window, and said absolutely nothing. He just stared at the employee for a full minute while holding cash in his hand. Then, without a word, he drove off. No order, no explanation. Just pure, unsettling confusion. 8. A man once rolled up to a drive-thru on an electric unicycle, dressed in full medieval knight armor. He dramatically raised his visor and declared, "1 McNugget for the kingdom." The employees, unfazed, simply asked, "Would you like sauce with that, sire?" 9. A customer once arrived at a Taco Bell drive-thru and handed the cashier a crystal ball, demanding they divine the perfect order for them. The cashier, rolling with it, waved their hands mystically and gave them a burrito. The customer gasped and whispered, "You have the gift." 10. A man in a full Batman costume pulled up to a drive-thru and ordered his food in the deepest, most dramatic Batman voice imaginable. He refused to break character, even when asked to repeat his order. When they handed him his food, he growled, "Justice is served," and sped off. Some say he's still out there, defending Gotham, one burger at a time. 11. A woman once angrily returned a cheeseburger at a McDonald's by throwing it back through the window. Why? Because it had pickles. Instead of simply asking for a refund, she just launched the burger like a fast food grenade and sped away. No refund, no explanation, just rage. 12. A man once pushed a regular old lawnmower through a Taco Bell drive-thru, acting like it was a totally normal vehicle. It wasn't even a riding mower, just a push mower. He patiently stood behind other cars in line, holding onto the handle as if this was just another Tuesday. 13. A customer once tried to order sushi at a McDonald's. When the cashier told him they didn't sell sushi, he slammed his hands on the wheel and shouted, "Well, you should," before peeling out of the parking lot. Honestly, he's not wrong. But maybe try a different restaurant, buddy. 14. A group of teens once drove a canoe through a KFC drive-thru. It had wheels attached to the bottom and was technically street legal, but the employees refused to serve them. They responded by dramatically paddling away in defeat, even though they were still on dry land. 15. A man once rolled through a fast food drive-thru on a unicycle while juggling 3 cheeseburgers. He placed his order mid-trick and somehow managed to pay without dropping anything. The cashier was so impressed they gave him free fries, because honestly, that level of balance deserves a reward. 16. A woman once arrived at a drive-thru in an inflatable dinosaur costume. She refused to take off the headpiece while ordering, so all the cashier heard was muffled, prehistoric grumbling. When they finally handed her the food, she let out a dramatic T-Rex roar and stomped away like she was in Jurassic Park. The commitment? Unmatched. 17. A man once tried to barter for his meal using one very valuable secret. When the cashier asked what it was, he leaned in and whispered, "The moon landing was fake." The cashier, without missing a beat, just said, "That'll be $9.99. 18. Someone once ordered a single French fry, not a small fry. 1. Singular, fry. When asked if they were serious, they doubled down and said, "And please make it your best fry." That poor cashier probably had to go full Gordon Ramsay mode, inspecting the fries for the perfect one. 19. A guy once rolled up to a Starbucks drive-thru and ordered an espresso for his hamster. He specified that it needed to be extra tiny with just a hint of cinnamon. Instead of turning him away, the barista actually made a miniature hamstercino with foamed milk in a tiny cup. Some heroes don't wear capes. Some make espresso for rodents. 20. A woman once went through a Taco Bell drive-thru and asked for a surprise meal. When the employee asked what that meant, she said, "Just make whatever feels right." The crew got creative and made her a taco filled entirely with nacho cheese. She took a bite, nodded thoughtfully, and said, "Yes, this is my destiny." 21. A customer once brought a full karaoke machine to a McDonald's drive-thru and insisted on singing their order. The performance lasted 2 minutes and ended with an overly dramatic falsetto on the words, "With a large drank." The cashier just stared, completely done with life, before saying, "Moos, anything else?" 22. A guy in Texas once brought a blow-up doll as his date through a drive-thru. He even ordered for her a salad because she's watching her figure. The cashier didn't say a word. They just handed him the bag and slowly closed the window. Sometimes it's best not to ask questions. 23. A woman once tried to return a fully eaten meal. Not just a few bites. The entire burger was gone, the fries were crumbs, and the drink was empty. When asked why she wanted a refund, she simply said, "I didn't like it." The manager stared at the empty tray and responded, "I can see that." 24. Someone once rode through a drive-thru on a literal bed. It had wheels, it was pushed by his friends, and yes, he was in pajamas. The cashier, to their credit, took the order without even blinking. Honestly, if you're that committed to comfort, you deserve your meal. 25. A man once fake proposed to his girlfriend in a drive-thru, just to see if they'd get free food. The employees got so excited that they gave them a free dessert, only for the girlfriend to say, "Wait, that wasn't real?" The guy panicked, tried to backtrack, and ended up accidentally proposing for real. Drive-thru wedding coming soon. 26. A woman once pulled up to a drive-thru and asked for directions to another restaurant. The cashier, clearly fed up with life, gave her the wrong address. Accidental sabotage or just good old-fashioned pettiness? You decide. 27. Someone once tried to pay with a QR code, drawn in pen on a napkin. They confidently held it up to the scanner, and when it didn't work, they sighed and said, "Guess the Wi-Fi's down again." 28. A guy once brought his pet chicken through a drive-thru and asked if they could make her a custom vegetarian nugget. The cashier paused for a solid 10 seconds before saying, "You do realize where you are, right?" 29. A guy once tried to trade an unopened can of Red Bull for a burger, claiming it was equal value on the stock market. When the cashier refused, he shrugged and said, "Your loss. This is a vintage 2017 edition." 30. A man once ate an entire Happy Meal in reverse while still in the drive-thru. He started with the toy, then drank the soda before unwrapping the burger, all while making direct eye contact with the cashier. Nobody knows why, but honestly, we respect the commitment to chaos. 31. A woman once tried to order a single lettuce leaf. When the employee hesitated, she clarified, "Just one, not a salad, not a burger, one singular, beautiful leaf." After a long pause, the worker just handed her a napkin with a lettuce leaf inside. She paid an exact change. 32. A guy once pulled up to a McDonald's drive-thru in a full suit of medieval armor. When asked why, he simply said, "I am on a noble quest for a McFlurry." The cashier was so impressed, they gave him extra toppings for free. 33. A customer once brought a fully decorated Christmas tree in their passenger seat and asked if it could get a free holiday meal. The employee jokingly said yes, so the customer ordered a full meal and then, dead serious, placed the food on the tree like an offering. 34. A man once pulled up to a Taco Bell drive-thru, but he wasn't driving a car, he was driving a literal bumper car. The cashier didn't even blink, just said, "Sir, this isn't street legal." The guy responded, "Neither is half your menu, but here we are." 35. Someone once placed an entire catering order in a drive-thru for a wedding. The poor worker had to read back 72 tacos, 38 burritos, 15 nachos, and a single sad side of rice. Hopefully, that marriage lasted longer than their food did. 36. A man once went through a Burger King drive-thru wearing a full Burger King mascot costume. He dramatically whispered, "I have returned to reclaim my kingdom." The staff just handed him his fries like it was totally normal. 37. A woman once asked for her fries to be extra crispy. When they weren't crispy enough, she threw them back and shouted, "Burn them like the witches of Salem!" The employees, probably fearing for their lives, made her a fresh batch immediately. 38. A guy once tried to return a melted ice cream cone. When the employee told him that's just how ice cream works, he sighed dramatically and said, "Then explain Alaska." "Sir." "What?" 39. Someone once pulled up to a Starbucks drive-thru and ordered a cup of water but make it fancy. The barista, probably having too much fun, added whipped cream and a caramel drizzle. The customer took one sip and whispered, "Exquisite." 40. A man once went to a drive-thru with his entire order written in calligraphy on a scroll. He unrolled it, held it dramatically in front of him, and said, "I request a cheeseburger and your finest McNuggets." The worker stared at him for a solid 10 seconds before responding, "Anything to drink?" 41. A customer once went through a drive-thru and asked for an entire meal, but surprised me. The employee gave him a fish sandwich, a milkshake, and a single pancake. The guy looked at the food, nodded, and said, "Destiny has spoken." 42. A woman once ordered a milkshake but refused to take it because she didn't like the vibes. The worker, confused, just held the shake while she stared at it suspiciously for a full minute. Then she whispered, "Nah," and drove away. 43. A guy once brought an actual shopping cart full of pennies to pay for his meal. The cashier, completely over it, just stared at him and said, "Sir, no." The guy looked at the cart, sighed, and said, "Fair enough." Then he wheeled away in defeat. 44. A drive-thru worker once saw a man pull up with his car absolutely filled with stuffed animals. Like there was barely space for him. When the cashier asked if they were his kids' toys, he just shook his head and said, "They don't talk back." I have so many questions. 45. A customer once asked for a burger, but specified they wanted it deconstructed like a high-end restaurant. The confused cashier handed them a bag containing each ingredient separately. The customer nodded approvingly and said, "Ah, culinary excellence." 46. A guy once pulled up to a McDonald's drive-thru in a full tuxedo, complete with a top hat and cane. When the employee asked why he was so dressed up, he simply said, "Because this is a fine dining establishment." He then proceeded to eat a Big Mac with a knife and fork, inside his car. 47. Someone once ordered a burger with nothing on it. Thinking he meant plain, the worker handed him a bun with just a patty. The guy stared at it for a second, shook his head and said, "No, I meant nothing." Take it back. He was then given an empty bun. He took a bite, nodded, and drove off. 48. A guy once pulled up to a McDonald's drive-thru with a magic 8-ball and insisted that it would choose his order. He shook it, read the answer, and sighed, "Guess I'm getting the filet-o-fish." The cashier, trying not to laugh, just said, "The 8-ball never lies." 49. A guy once ordered a single napkin. That's it. When the confused cashier tried to hand him a stack, he shook his head and said, "No, just one." The employee, probably questioning all their life choices, carefully peeled off a single napkin and placed it in the bag. The guy accepted it like it was a sacred relic and drove away. 50. A woman once tried to return a milkshake because it was too cold. When the cashier explained that milkshakes are supposed to be cold, she frowned and asked, "Can you, microwave it?" Instead, they just gave her a melted sundae and called it a day. 51. A man once pulled up to a Taco Bell drive-thru and demanded a secret menu item. When the worker said Taco Bell doesn't have a secret menu, the man winked and whispered, "We both know that's not true." They ended up giving him a burrito with every sauce available just to make him go away. 52. Someone once tried to pay for their meal with a magic trick. They told the cashier, "If I pull a quarter from behind your ear, the meal is free." The cashier let them do the trick, and then still made them pay. Magic can't beat capitalism. 53. A guy once ordered a cheeseburger, took one bite, and immediately drove back around to return it. His reason? "I changed my mind." The employee stared at him and said, "That's not how this works, man." 54. A woman once ordered a Happy Meal for her inner child. When asked if she wanted a boy or girl toy, she said, "Surprise me, let fate decide." Honestly, respect. 55. A customer once tried to order spaghetti at a Burger King. When the worker said they didn't have spaghetti, the man nodded and said, "Then I'll wait until you do." He parked his car for an hour. He never got his spaghetti. 56. A man once brought a full desktop computer to a drive-thru, complete with a keyboard and monitor. He claimed he was ordering through email and demanded they respond within 30 seconds or he'd escalate to customer service. 57. Someone once tried to order a reverse burger. When asked what that meant, they explained, "Put the patty on the outside and the buns in the middle." The worker gave them a regular burger and told them to flip it themselves. Fair enough. 58. A guy once rolled up to a drive-thru and asked for the saddest meal you can legally sell me. The cashier, confused but intrigued, gave him a plain bun, a single unseasoned patty, and a small water. He nodded solemnly, said, "Perfect," and drove off. Hope you're okay, dude. 59. A man once demanded that his soda be shaken before handing it to him. The employee, knowing exactly what was about to happen, hesitated but did it anyway. The guy took the drink, immediately opened it, and got soda all over himself. He just nodded and said, "As expected." 60. A woman once pulled up to a drive-thru with her cat sitting on the dashboard wearing a tiny sweater. When the cashier complimented the cat's outfit, the woman said, "She insisted on dressing up for this." The cat, looking incredibly smug, flicked its tail like a celebrity on a red carpet. 61. A man once pulled up to a McDonald's drive-thru and ordered a single sesame seed. Just one. When the cashier stared in silence, the man pulled out a magnifying glass and said, "I'll wait." Eventually, they just gave him a bun, and he carefully removed a seed himself. 62. A woman once asked for a coffee that was exactly 97 degrees. The employee, already exhausted, just handed her a regular coffee and said, "Yep, totally 97. She took a sip, nodded approvingly, and drove away. Sometimes confidence is everything. 63. Someone once tried to order a burger but make it diet. When asked what that meant, they said, just less. The cashier, done with life, handed them an empty wrapper and wished them a good day. 64. A guy once drove through in a clown costume at 3 a.m. The cashier, unfazed, just said, "Nice costume, man." The guy looked around suspiciously and whispered, "What costume?" before taking his food and peeling out of the parking lot. 65. A customer once tried to pay for their meal with a scratch-off lottery ticket. When the cashier explained that wasn't real money, they sighed, scratched it off right then and there, and yelled, "I won! Guess I'll take 2 meals." Spoiler, it was a losing ticket. 66. A woman once demanded that her burger be cut into quarters for portion control. When handed a neatly quartered burger, she ate all 4 pieces in under 30 seconds. Glad that worked out for her. 67. A man once ordered a burger with no bun, no patty, no toppings, just the wrapper. The confused employee handed him an empty wrapper. The guy nodded in approval, paid, and drove off. What was his endgame? We may never know. 68. A guy once went through a drive-thru and tipped the cashier a single peanut. He carefully placed it in their hand, patted it twice like it was a $100 bill, and whispered, "Invest wisely." The cashier just stared at the peanut, then at the guy, who nodded seriously before peeling out of the parking lot like he just completed an elite transaction. 69. Someone once pulled up to a Starbucks drive-thru and asked if they could pay their bill in hugs. The cashier, barely looking up, responded with the most exhausted tone possible. "Sir, this is a Wendy's." The customer, unfazed, just nodded and said, "Okay, then how much for just one high five?" 70. A woman once ordered a milkshake and then asked, "Could you stir it with your hands? I don't trust spoons." The employee, probably processing more red flags than a horror movie protagonist, just said, No." She sighed dramatically, shook her head, and muttered, "Fine, I'll do it myself," before driving off while furiously shaking the cup like it was a protein shake. 71. A man once rolled up to a Taco Bell drive-thru, looked the cashier dead in the eyes, and said, "Give me whatever you think I deserve." The employee, sensing a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, handed him a single napkin. The man stared at it, then back at the cashier, sighed, and whispered, "Yeah, that's fair." 72. A guy once pulled up with a dog in the passenger seat wearing sunglasses and a hoodie. When the cashier, barely holding in laughter, complimented the dog's outfit, the guy simply said, "He picks his own clothes." As if to prove it, the dog nodded. The employee, unsure whether to call for backup or offer the dog a job, just handed over the food and wished them a nice day. 73. Someone once ordered a burger extra sad. The employee, completely done with their shift, decided to fully commit to the bit. They forgot the cheese, undercooked the patty, used a single, soggy pickle, and wrapped it in a crumpled napkin. When they handed it over, the customer took one slow bite, stared into the distance, and whispered, "Perfect." Then, without another word, they drove off into the night. Hope you're okay, buddy. 74. A man once asked for a cup of ice, then requested the cashier, "Make it warmer." Confused, the employee tried explaining that warming ice would just turn it into water. The man gasped dramatically, like he just cracked a major conspiracy, and whispered, "You cracked the code." Then, he drove away without even taking the cup. 75. A woman once demanded her fries be arranged into a smiley face in the box. The employee, trying to avoid a scene, actually took the time to position the fries into 2 eyes and a mouth. The woman took a picture, sighed happily, and said, "My therapist is going to love this." Then, without even taking the fries, she drove away like she just completed a side quest in life. 76. A customer once asked for a cheeseburger with mystery cheese. When asked what that was, they just shrugged and said, "You pick. Surprise me." The employee, probably enjoying this way too much, placed a single Kraft cheese slice, still in the wrapper, inside the bun. The customer opened it, gave an approving nod, and said, "Now that's what I call mystery." 77. A man once tried to use his gym membership card as a payment method. When the cashier told him it wasn't a valid form of currency, he nodded and said, "Makes sense." Then, in complete silence, he flexed both biceps, winked, and drove away. What was his plan? Nobody knows. 78. Someone once brought their pet parrot to a Burger King drive-thru and let the bird place the order. The parrot, somehow more articulate than most human customers, clearly said, Freeze, nuggets, Coke. The cashier, visibly stunned, just said, "Dude, that bird speaks better than half our customers." 79. A woman once asked for a comically large drink. When given the largest size available, she sighed and said, "No, I mean like cartoonishly big, like if a giant ordered it." The worker handed her a regular cup with 3 straws taped together. She nodded, whispered "perfection," and drove off. 80. A man once rolled up to a Taco Bell with a clipboard and asked if he could inspect the burritos for quality control. The cashier, playing along, handed him a burrito. The man took out a tiny magnifying glass, nodded professionally, and said, "Good tortilla integrity." He then handed it back and said, "You pass." Then he left, without buying anything. 81. Someone once pulled up to a McDonald's and ordered 1 fry, just one. The employee, baffled but committed, picked 1 single fry and placed it gently into a bag. The customer paid an exact change, gave a thumbs up, and drove off like they had just made the deal of a lifetime. 82. A woman once requested a burger. That tells a story. The confused worker asked for clarification and she sighed and said, "You know, like something that has drama, emotion, a real journey." The worker, fully embracing the madness, gave her a burger missing the bottom bun, with a single onion ring hidden inside like a plot twist. She took one look at it and whispered, "Incredible storytelling." 83. A man once tried to order 1 regret to go. The employee, completely done, just handed him a fish sandwich and said, "This should do it." The customer nodded knowingly, as if they had just shared some deep, unspoken truth, then drove away in complete silence. 84. Someone once asked if they could trade in their half-eaten meal for something different. When told that wasn't allowed, they shrugged and said, "Worth a shot?" Then they finished eating and left without another word. 85. A man once brought his own ingredients to a drive-thru and asked the staff to assemble it with love. He handed them his own homemade beef patty, a fancy brioche bun, and an avocado. The cashier, absolutely not having it, just said, "Sir, this is Burger King, not Build-A-Bear." 86. A guy once pulled up to a McDonald's drive-thru wearing a full astronaut suit. The cashier, probably having seen weirder, just asked, "What can I get for you?" The man slowly turned his helmet visor down and said, "1 small fry for man, 1 giant meal for my stomach." 87. A woman once tried to return a cheeseburger because it was too cheeseburgery. When asked what that meant, she sighed and said, "I was expecting more of a delicate cheese essence. Ma'am, this is not a 5-star bistro." 88. Someone once ordered an entire meal in complete mime performance. No words, just exaggerated gestures. He mimed holding a burger, sipping a drink, even counting imaginary cash. The cashier, fully invested at this point, silently handed him the order. They exchanged a slow, dramatic nod before he drove off. 89. A customer once asked for a whispered order. Confused, the cashier leaned in and softly said, "1 cheeseburger, 1 small fry?" The customer whispered back, "Perfect." Then they both continued the entire transaction in hushed tones like it was some kind of secret mission. 90. A man once drove up with a pet snake wrapped around his arm. When the cashier, slightly alarmed, hesitated to take the money, the man reassured them by saying, "Oh, don't worry, he's already eaten today." That did not help. 91. A woman once ordered a milkshake but only the good parts. When asked what that meant, she replied, "You know, like the best sip." The cashier, running on pure confusion, just handed her a regular shake and said, "This one's all good parts." She took a sip, nodded approvingly, and drove away. 92. Someone once asked for a burger with an air of mystery. The cashier, clearly a legend, wrapped the burger in 3 different layers of paper, one inside another, so the customer had to unwrap the mystery with each bite. The customer whispered, "Brilliant." 93. A guy once ordered a single onion ring for dramatic effect. When handed the ring, he immediately got out of his car, got down on one knee and proposed to himself. The cashier, watching this happen, just muttered, "Man, I gotta find a new job." 94. A woman once asked if she could pay in kindness. The employee, tired but entertained, said, "That's sweet, but we take cash or card." She sighed, pulled out a $10 bill and said, "Fine, but I hope you know I was going to leave a really nice compliment." 95. A man once ordered a McFlurry but asked them to remove the emsk. The cashier, exhausted, just handed him a cup of plain ice cream. He smiled and said, "Ah, perfection." 96. Someone once asked for a side of respect. The cashier, not even hesitating, said, "We ran out of that in 2006. The customer nodded and replied, "Same." 97. A woman once tried to subscribe to a burger, asking if she could pay $1 a month for the next year instead of all at once. The manager told her it wasn't a payment plan, to which she replied, "Wow, and I thought this was a reputable establishment." 98. A woman once asked for her fries to be emotionally supportive. The cashier, confused but rolling with it, drew a little smiley face on the bag. She gasped and said, This is what I needed today." Then she drove off without taking the fries. 99. A man once tried to order a spiritually fulfilling meal. The employee, sensing an opportunity, gave him a filet-o-fish, a medium fry, and a McDonald's Happy Meal toy. The guy took one look at it, nodded solemnly, and whispered, "Finally, enlightenment." 100. Someone once ordered a time travel meal. When asked what that was, they replied, "Something that makes me feel like a kid again." The cashier gave them a Happy Meal with extra napkins for nostalgia. The customer got teary-eyed, whispered, "You get it," and drove away. 101. A guy once asked if he could just borrow a burger. Not buy, borrow. When the cashier asked what he meant, the man explained, "I'll bring it back when I'm done." Sir, that is not how burgers work. You made it to the end. Welcome to the Factomer Club. Now you officially know way too much about drive-thrus, and I respect that. Drop the secret word "weird fries" in the comments so I know you're one of us. Hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned. There's way more weirdness coming your way.